This is a new video transmitter from Divimath, and it goes up to 4 watts of output power. And if you have the HDZero video system, that might excite you because I have long said that HDZero could benefit from a higher output power video transmitter to give it more penetration and range. But this video transmitter does not work with the HDZero video system. It's an analog video transmitter. And in this video, we're going to talk about, number one, why did Divimath make a 4-watt analog video transmitter when its like secret sauce is the digital technology that's in the HDZero video system? And number two, why this actually solves a problem that the entire analog FPV market is just starting to have, and it's going to get worse in the coming years. I'm Joshua Bardwell. You're going to learn something today. I am struggling throughout this intro with the distinction and relationship between the companies Divimath and HDZero. And I feel like we just got to kind of get this out of the way at the beginning of the video, and then everything will go smoothly. Divimath and HDZero have a lot in common, but they have one key thing that makes them distinct. What they have in common is that they're both founded and run, and I assume owned, by Carl Zhou, the creator of the HDZero digital video system that we all love. They both are compatible with the HDZero video system, so both of these goggles will receive a signal from your HDZero video transmitter. And that leads a lot of people to think that they're basically the same thing under a different name. And the distinction that has to be made is that Divimath is a NDAA compliant company that makes NDAA compliant products. What that basically means is that the company is not based in China and the manufacturing is not done in China or other countries that the United States government doesn't like their stuff to come from. So these goggles, the HDZero goggles, were manufactured in China. These Divimath goggles were manufactured in, I believe it is Malaysia. And for the perspective of the average hobbyist, that doesn't really matter. We just want stuff and we want to pay as little as possible for it. And so we look over at the Divimath stuff and we say, not for me, thank you. And from the perspective of a content creator, it's easy for me to get lazy and just say, oh yeah, the HDZero goggles, except that makes the people over at Divimath lose their goddamn minds because they're worried that someone from the United States government will see me calling these HDZero goggles and then question whether they're actually made in Malaysia or whether they're made in China. So I'll try to say Divimath for the rest of this video, and now hopefully you understand the relationship between Divimath and HDZero. Here's the problem that this video transmitter solves that's starting to affect the entire analog FPV hobby and will get worse in the coming years. Every analog video transmitter, every 5.8 gigahertz analog video transmitter, which is most of them, every 5.8 gigahertz analog video transmitter made in the last forever uses the exact same chip. It has a chip on it. It's from a company called Richwave, and I don't know what the model number of the chip is. I could look it up, but I don't have it off the top of my head. And I kind of don't really even know what the chip does. It has something to do with the RF modulation, the creation of the RF signal. But the bottom line is every analog 5.8 gigahertz video transmitter has this chip on it. And that hasn't mattered until recently because this chip has been plentiful and cheap. Who wants an analog chip that was made with technology from the 1960s, right? We're all trying to do cool digital stuff, and that's where the development and the price has been. But for some reason, in the last 3 to 5 years, the demand for analog video transmitters has gone way up, almost as if some country out there is just building tens of thousands of analog drones a month and then blowing them up. And so the price of this chip was recently marked up from the manufacturer by 5x. It's gone way up. And this is trickling down into the analog VTX market. The price of an analog VTX will not remain the same. The days of a $15 analog VTX are gone because the Richwave chip itself is more expensive than that. And if you've noticed that analog VTXs seem to have gotten more expensive and you just think people are gouging, well, I mean, you could argue that the manufacturer of the chip is gouging, but the manufacturer of the VTXs are just doing what they have to do in order to build them. And the reason that this Divimath VTX is so significant is that it does not contain that chip. Carl Zhou, the engineer who not single-handedly, but in as much as anyone gets credit, invented HDZero, a completely new way of transmitting video data over the air. He invented a new way of making a video transmitter that completely bypasses that. And it comes with a couple of other additional benefits, like the ability to be on 3.3 gigahertz or 5.8 gigahertz or any other frequency band that you really want without being tied to that one chip that is tied to that one frequency band. You can actually put this video transmitter on any 5.8 gigahertz frequency you want. Not just the standard race band or the standard. You can just type a 4-digit number in and it'll go to that frequency. I don't know what that would be good for, but it can do it. And the other video transmitters, they typically can't do that. But the key thing about this video transmitter is that it completely bypasses that supply chain restriction. And that's huge, right? If there's only one source for a chip and everyone needs that chip and then somebody marks up the price of that chip, you're screwed. You just have to give them their money or you don't get your video transmitter. I think we're going to see HDZero, Divimath. We're going to see Divimath leaning into this hard. This is just the first video transmitter. I think we're going to see them start to make analog video transmitters at varying price points and capabilities to try to fill a need in the market that is going to be created by the increase in price of this rich wave chip. So with all that being said, let's take a closer look at this video transmitter. Well, there's not that much to see, but let's take a closer look at this video transmitter and we're going to put it in a drone. We're going to take it out, we're going to fly it and screw around with it and see how it performs. A couple notes on installation. This wires up pretty much the same as any video transmitter you've ever wired up. It does pull a lot of power. At maximum output power, the user manual says it can pull as much as 20 watts of power, and that's a lot. At 12 volts, 20 divided by 12, it's a little over 2 amps, basically. So if you're running this off a voltage regulator, do that math. Take 20 watts, divide by the voltage, 20 divided by 9 volts, 20 divided by 12 volts, and however many amps that comes out to, your regulator needs to be able to provide that many amps. And frankly, it needs to be able to provide maybe a little bit more than that. You always want a little bit of headroom. The voltage regulator on this flight controller is rated for, I think it's 2.5 or 3 amps. I did look it up, but now I'm blanking on the number. And so we should be good to go. It's a 12-volt regulator. We should be good to go. You can run the video transmitter off of battery voltage. It does take up to 6S battery voltage, but Divimath recommends running it off a voltage regulator because that helps filter out some voltage spikes. And you never know, a voltage spike always has a potential to fry something. As far as the UART connection, it is interesting to me that the video transmitter has both a TX and an RX. Normally a video transmitter would just have one UART pad for the smart audio or immersion RC tramp telemetry connection that lets the flight controller change the band, channel, and power. Oh, I see. Yeah. So we've got a TX and an RX, but the RX is not used and TX goes to TX. I did TX to RX and RX to TX, like obviously that's not the right way to wire it up. So let me go fix that real quick. Speaking of smart audio, the video transmitter supports both TBS smart audio and immersion RC tramp. Basically just whatever you set the flight controller to, it's just going to work. There's a separate vtxtable that you have to load depending on which one you're choosing, and those are in the user manual. We'll take a look at those when I get over to the computer. It's one of those little things that Divimath / HDZero often does where they're just like, we're going to just make things work for the end user in the easiest and most intuitive way that we can. Why pick one? Just make our custom firmware support both. There's no advantage to one over the other, at least as far as I know. But like, you're not going to end up in a situation where you can't remember which protocol this video transmitter supports. You pick one and then it doesn't work. It's just going to work, whichever one you pick. That's nice. Divimath strongly recommends that you use the exact pigtail cables that they provide with the VTX. And the reason for that is that these pigtail cables, when you order them off of Amazon or you order them from wherever, they are of widely variable quality. The amount of loss in that cable can be very low, like maybe around 1 dB, and it can be significantly higher than that. And unless you have the tool that you would need to test the loss of the cable, which you probably don't have unless you work in an RF lab, you don't know what you're getting. But especially as you get to very high-powered video transmitters, those cheap cables can cause reflections to go back to the video transmitter and potentially damage it. By those same token, if you're operating at the higher output powers and like an antenna comes off, or this comes disconnected or gets damaged in some way, you're at a greatly increased risk of damaging the video transmitter, and that's just a consequence of these very high-powered video transmitters. The same is true for the TBS Unified DP, and it's just what you get. Now, Divimath has a 3D print that they recommend and a specific way of mounting the video transmitter and the pigtail cables that they recommend, and it doesn't work for this build. It doesn't work for this frame, so I've just gone ahead and done it the best I can, and I have taken into account the guidelines like you don't want to have a sharp bend. Well, I mean, that's the least sharp bend that I can possibly come up with and still get these antenna mounting SMAs to my 3D print. It's got to go in wherever you're going to put it, and so there has to be some flexibility there, and we're going to find out. I mean, if you could only ever mount it the exact way that they say you have to mount it, then that's a pretty big downside. So I'm going to mount it the way that works for my frame with good best practices, and we're going to just take it from there. Oh, right, and the other thing which I have to take into account is this is the 5.8G antenna, and that's going on the left side. So that's going to be 5.8 gigahertz, and this is going to be the 3.3 gig. So 5.8 gig on the left, 3.3 gig on the right. The one output is always tied to one particular frequency. As far as setting up Betaflight goes, there aren't a lot of surprises here. The main thing we have to do is set up the vtxtable for the video transmitter. The vtxtable being the thing here in Betaflight's video transmitter tab that tells the flight controller what bands and channels this video transmitter supports. The only real reason you need to do that is if you want to be able to change bands and channels using like your handset, your goggles, and other things that go through the flight controller. The video transmitter does have the ability to change band, channel, and power via button press, but nobody wants to do that. As you can see here, the vtxtable gets pretty freaking huge because there are so many different bands and so many different channels that are supported. So I don't even know if you can add all of this to Betaflight. Like, can you literally add 15 bands? No, it'll only let you have 8 bands at most. I thought there was a limit there. So what we're gonna have to do is go through this vtxtable, and we're gonna have to select which of these bands we want to support, and then do we type it in manually? Surely not. Fill in the name, letter, and frequency value according to your requirements. So it looks like it's just having you type them by hand? Surely not. All right, so I have manually added these 2 bands. This is 5.8 gigahertz race band and 3.3 gigahertz D band, which when I tried out 3.3 gigahertz, that was the one that was the most legal to use. I did have to manually type in the frequencies, so with great freedom comes great responsibility, I guess. The upside is you can type in any frequency you want, and the video transmitter will supposedly do it. The downside is if I make a typo here, I'm not going to be on, like if I were to accidentally type 5697, I would just get bad reception on race 2 because I'm on the wrong frequency. So, you know, just don't screw that up, I guess. The other thing I did was I added one test band with just made up frequencies, 5650, 5700, 5750, 5800, and so on, just to test the premise that it would go to those arbitrary frequencies. And I'm staying within the 5.8 gigahertz band, but as you see from this table, this video transmitter can do all the way up to, will it go above 5900, 5917? Yeah, it'll go up to 6 gigahertz. Right here, you can see 6013 and 6030, and it'll go all the way down to 5 gigahertz, 4900, right? And it'll do 3.3 gigahertz as well. So you have a wide range of frequencies from which to choose. I also need to set up the power levels. Okay, so the number of power levels is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to put in 1, 14, 23, 26, 30, and 36 as the value. And then for the labels just are what you see. I like to put 4 watt here, not max. Yeah, The key thing is that these values are correct, because that's what the video transmitter actually uses to set its output power. And then this is just what you see in the on-screen display. There we go. Now it's flashing, and video transmitter device ready, true. There we go. She's ready to go. The next thing to do is to button this up, take it outside and fly it. But before we do that, it's time to pay the bills. Would you please consider joining my Patreon? I can't keep doing the work that I do here if I can't pay my bills. And yes, YouTube has ad revenue. Yes, you do see ads on the videos. That's true. But the #1 source of income for me is people like you deciding to go to the link in the video description below and join my Patreon. The amount is less than a pack of props a month. So it's not that you can't afford it. It's just whether you decide today's the day I've earned it. And if I haven't earned it, that's okay. I watch lots of content creators and I don't join their Patreons either. Freaking greedy SOBs. But every so often, I watch a guy long enough, he gives me enough content, enough value, enough entertainment that I go, screw it, I'm joining his Patreon. And if today's that day for you, get down to the link and do it. And if not, just keep watching the video. I'll keep trying to earn it. Now it's time to put this thing in the air and see how it performs. And a couple notes before we do that. #1, I will be testing the 5.8 gigahertz performance only. I think there's going to be a substantial number of people who are interested in this purely as a 5.8 gigahertz just hobby video transmitter. And the other functionality of this video transmitter, like the ability to transmit at 3.3 gig and the ability to switch back and forth while you're flying, including the goggle switching back and forth, I'm going to save that for another video. I just want to see how this stacks up as a 4-watt, 5.8 gigahertz video transmitter. The other thing you're going to notice is that I'm not using my HDZero goggles. I'm using these Divimath NDAA goggles. Now, I have every reason to believe that the performance of the analog receiver is identical between them, but these have the ability to do that additional functionality, the channel switching and so forth, and so I've set them up. The other thing, finally, is that I am using a single Omni antenna on here. I want to take like the directionality of my head out of the equation, and so just an Omni antenna, and so it shouldn't really matter which way I'm facing, although obviously straight behind me, I don't know, that sticks up pretty far above my head. It may not even matter too much if it's behind me. Let's put it in the air. We will start this at 1 watt output power. So we're on race 8, 1 watt. Here we go. And the first thing I always do when I'm feeling out a new video transmitter is I just do this little loop around my outer fence line. It's just a consistent path to fly that gives me a sense of how well things are going. As we go behind the house, we'll get some obstruction between me and the device. And we'll see how it hangs in there. I'll go around again. And that's usually pretty doable at 1 watt with a patch antenna. So now we're doing it at 1 watt with an Omni antenna, so no additional gain. Now we'll go behind here. Here the barn is between us and the drone, hanging in there pretty good, I think. And we will feel our way out here and finish this loop around the property. The next thing I like to do is fly this way and kind of hug the ground a little bit. And usually we're pretty good through here. We get a lot of foliage and stuff. We start to get like this hill and this foliage here, causing a little bit of breakup. We'll continue to push on as long as I feel safe doing so, though. Definitely getting some breakup. Oh gosh. Yeah. Definitely getting some breakup there. I gotta climb a little. Yeah. No, that is a stretch. Let me bring it on home. Let's see what happens if I turn it up to 4 watts. So that was 1 watt. So I've done that exact run before with other 5.8 gigahertz video transmitters, but they're in the more like 1.6 to 3 watt range. So I don't know what it means that I can't do it at 1 watt. And I'm not sure if I've done that with the directional. I think I've mostly done that with the directional antenna. So I've changed the variables a little bit here. The other thing to keep in mind as I turn it up to 4 watts is The season, the time of year when I do this also has an effect because there's more foliage on the trees, and so that causes more loss. So I'm not sure how directly we can compare this to previous attempts. Here, we'll turn it up to 4 watt. We'll see how it does. Better. I feel like I'm getting some breakup. Let me turn my head. A little better. Yeah. I gotta tell you, that feels almost more like some kind of interference than... Oh, now it's clean as a whistle. Something about the way it was breaking up feels almost more like interference than just weak signal. This right here is a bandpass filter. It's made by Divimath, and the idea is that if you have a 5 gigahertz, 5.8 gigahertz video receiver, it can get interference from like your Express LRS transmitter, especially if your Express LRS transmitter is turned up to full power. That may sound a little counterintuitive because, of course, the Express LRS transmitter is at 2.4 gigahertz or 900 megahertz, but two things can happen. Number one, there are harmonics going up. So at 2.4 gigahertz, you have, at 4.8 gigahertz, you have a harmonic, which is not 5.8, but still. The other thing that can happen is when you have a powerful transmitter at almost any frequency, if it's close enough to the receiver, it will desensitize the receiver and cause problems. So Ryan Quellet recommended that I try installing this on the goggle and see, well, since I was seeing kind of what looked like interference, I think it's worth a try. Let's see what difference it makes. So nothing has changed here, except that we have that filter in. Still at 4 watts. We're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to turn, and I'm going to see if the glitchiness is any better, and or if what I see when it glitches is any better. See, because what I would expect to see is just static. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. See, right here, I'm just getting static now. I'm not getting the full screen drops and the sort of like horizontal bars that I was seeing. That's astounding. Wow. That's really something. Okay, well, that's probably got to be a video all of its own. That's hanging in there real good. Yeah, that's real good. Now that's at 4 watts. See if we can drop lower. It'll get worse as I drop lower. Oh, that's impressive. And we're seeing a relatively stable image. So it is going to static and it is going to black and white, but it's a pretty stable image. It's not scrolling or rolling. It's not going purple or shimmery. And bear in mind, this receiver has no fusion or anything like that. It's just a receiver. Okay, well, I am completely sold on the usefulness of these filters. That was a significant and noticeable improvement. This is even though I'm using 2.4 gigahertz Express LRS. So like 900 megahertz, the lower frequency should like cause more interference, but I don't know, 2.4 gigahertz, the harmonic is closer. I don't know, but the bottom line is it went from like full screen dropouts to just normal static. It significantly cleaned it up. It's a shame it takes so much height, because normally I would run this on a patch antenna and there wouldn't really be room to put it in there. That's really something. So far, we have a very powerful 5.8 gigahertz video transmitter, among the most powerful of the hobby grade video transmitters on the market. Obviously, if you go to AliExpress, you can get them 5 watts, 10 watts, 20 watts. Those aren't really intended for hobbyists, if you know what I mean. We've got a good, powerful video transmitter. It's clean. It has one of the cleanest and most stable signals I've seen. And it is very feature rich. You can set your VTX table any way you want. You can go to any frequency you want. And that alone is going to be worth the price of admission to a lot of people. But there are certain people out there who want the other thing that this guy's got that we haven't touched on yet in this video, the 3.3 gigahertz functionality. And in fact, we're not going to touch on that in this video. What I want to do in this video is say to you as a hobbyist, if you're looking for a 5.8 gigahertz video transmitter for freestyle and so forth, then is this the one for you, to help you start answering that question? The 3.3 gigahertz functionality, well, hobbyists might use it, but it's more going to be useful for people in other lines of work. And I actually dove into 3.3 gigahertz in a previous video and didn't have great results. Maybe it's because my hardware that I was using sucked, and maybe this thing's going to be better. So we're going to dive into 3.3 gigahertz functionality, including the ability to switch channels. This thing, when combined with the Divimath NDAA goggles, can switch channels in flight so fast, they say, that you won't interrupt your flying. It'll just be relatively instantaneous. We're going to test that out, as well as just test the raw 3.3 gigahertz performance in another video. I'll put a card on screen and a link in the video description below to that if it's finished yet. And if you don't see it, it's because I haven't finished it yet and haven't released it. So look forward to that. I'll see you there.